Welcome back to the Global Business Report. The Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council, PEBEC, has launched its fifth accelerator aimed at rapid implementation of reforms for further improvement of the ease of doing business in Nigeria. NAP 5.0 is the fifth of its kind since the establishment of PEBEC in 2016 and will run from the 5th of February through the 4th of April. Some key reforms implemented since 2016 include the automation of companies' registration by the CAC, the Corporate Affairs Commission, facilitating the legal frameworks for the operation of credit reporting bureaus and the use of movable assets such as collaterals for loans in Nigeria. In the last 3 years, Nigeria moved up 39 places from 170 to 131 on the World Bank Doing Business Index, and the country was twice recognized as a top 10 most improved economy in the world by the World Bank during the same period. Joining us now from Arise Abuja Studios to review all of this is the Senior Special Assistant to President Buhari on Ease of Doing Business, Dr. Jumoke Oduwole. Well, welcome, ma'am. Reduction of the number of inspections in construction, which is supposed to be, permitting implementation of joint inspections by related agencies in Lagos. How does this constitute a talking point in the conversation with regards to ease of doing business, with regards to construction and inspections?
So with dealing of construction permits, again, something within the state purview, it's what stakeholders have said to us, particularly in the construction sector, that the duplicity or the recurrent, so one agency comes for inspections, another comes later. They'd prefer it if everybody just came together, scheduled the appointment. The intervention on ease of doing business, as you know, we continue to prioritize the speed of doing business. So if they can get their inspections done, it also reduces costs because they deploy less man hours. So those are the things we focus on. We also prioritize transparency. So when people know the process, it makes it much easier for them to do business.
Fantastic. Also, the ports, improvement in the overall time, by about 48 hours in customs clearance at the ports by implementing a full pre-arrival cargo clearance process. How easy has that been? Ports have been in conversations all over the country, so I'd like to get your thoughts on how that's worked out.
Yeah, so these are what we have started. Today is the kickoff. These are reforms that we have discussed and agreed with different ministries, departments, agencies, state governments that are doable. We're not imposing them on anybody. They're things that have jointly been discussed as coming back from feedback from stakeholders. So the Nigerian Customs Service has taken up the challenge of particular areas in the process that can be collapsed, simplified, documentation adjusted, joint inspections that can make sure that they at least shave off 48 hours for that process. So this is exactly the kickoff. Today is the kickoff of this intervention. And within the next 60 days, we'll be keeping you updated on how things are progressing. We'll be tracking on a weekly basis all the different reforms across 9 reform areas.
Fantastic. Now, I do want to follow up on your point about not imposing these measures on stakeholders. Given your level of expertise, you also understand this was also put together with the Alhaji Bello, Honorable Minister of the FCT. While you can't, understand you can't impose, but some have said that it's probably a good idea to try to push as much as you can for them to follow these reforms because it's for the sector's best interest and for the stakeholders' best interest. So can you speak a little bit? Essentially, I'm saying some folks are saying you should actually impose them because that's what's going to work. What do you think?
No. So what is the hallmark of the success of the PEBEC is a very strong collaborative approach. So we've collaborated very well across ministries, departments, and agencies. As you know, there are 13 different ministers on the council itself. We've collaborated very well with National Assembly, with the judiciary, and with state governments. So, constitutionally, every area, every arm of government, and every level of government is charged with their own specific duties and constitutional powers. But what we've decided is that this is Team Nigeria. We have only one economy, and we're committed to working on all this together. So we do work as one team. We work basically seamlessly. So we came up with the reforms together based on information from stakeholders. We do a lot of mystery shopping. We do a lot of process review. We also benchmark on global best practices. And these are areas that we have identified that we're going to stretch ourselves and deliver these within the next 60 days for the Nigerian people.
Fantastic. Now, Dr. Oduwole, you've got the ear of the vice president, you've got the ear of the president. You've spent a lot of years working on this with various stakeholders and various folks in government. I want to get your thoughts on the fact that ease of doing business still has to be facilitated by infrastructure. And this is something I know stakeholders have probably brought up with you. So, you know, power, roads, and so on and so forth. By how much would you say government is also keeping an eye on that, in able to aid and bolster the work that you've and your team have already put into making this a success?
Yeah, Rotus, that's a really good question. So if you go back to the ERGP, you know that the competitiveness pillar under the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan is divided into two parts. There's the hard infrastructure, which is power, roads, rail, broadband, seaports, airport infrastructure. And then for the first time, we have the ease of doing business intervention, being a systemic intervention by this administration that has delivered concrete results. We're not unmindful of the fact that there's a strong link between the two. Indeed, the members of the PEBEC are the line ministers, works and housing, power, all the ministers, transport that are charged with the hard infrastructure provisions are also members of the council. So it's basically two sides of the same coin. Yesterday, I was joined by the special advisor to the president on infrastructure at yesterday's literation event, and he took a number of questions from the audience, explained where we are with the power, generation, transmission, and distribution. And just basically, we work in tandem together to deliver a competitive economy for the country.
Thank you for that. Now, another question I have for you. Of course, as I mentioned before you came on, Nigeria's jumped up 39 places on the World Bank Ease of Doing Business Index. We've been identified, as one of the top 10 most improved economies. But I do want to ask you about a little bit of pushback on that. Some have said that, it seems like the PEBEC is working towards just focusing on improvements with the World Bank. What about trickling down to where the everyday Nigerian can feel these improvements? Can you speak a little bit on that?
Sure. I think we used to get a lot of push on that point when we started. The mandate of the council is a twofold mandate. It's dual mandate. One is to remove bottlenecks and constraints to doing business. That's our priority. And the second priority is to improve the perception of the business climate, because everybody likes it when their country is perceived, not just perceived, but actually doing well. We chose the World Bank Doing Business Index because the flagship Ease of Doing Business report that Nigerians and international investors across the world look at when it comes to competitiveness. Now, the thing about the rankings is that it's very linked to private sector. It's actually validations that come from private sector. So you can't do one without the other in essence. It's not what the government tells the World Bank that is reported that is moving up on our rankings. It is what the private sector tells the World Bank, and the World Bank validate, and that is what is moving our rankings up. Prior to starting this intervention in 2015, Nigeria had dropped 84 points on that same index, and in the last 3 years, we've moved up 39 places. Rankings are just indicative of the work that's being done. When there have been years of decline, it's not an easy thing to just suddenly become the best, most competitive economy. But we have a systemic approach that is measured, that is empirical, that is rigorous, and that we're taking strong feedback from Nigerian SMEs, and we're working on their issues one by one and delivering real impact for them. At the held in the FCT last year, we listened to actual entrepreneurs. Yeah? The literation event, we had an event last night at the FCT. We've been on a subnational tour since October. So we had the 5th iteration of that literation here in Abuja, where the NAP 5.0 was launched. And we heard from testimonials from private sector, and indeed we were challenged and asked to do more. So it's that kind of open line of communication that is seeing the traction that is trickling down actually and reflecting in the rankings. It's not the other way around.
Fantastic stuff. Dr. Jumoke Oduwole, Special Advisor to the President on Ease of Doing Business, also Secretary to PEBEC. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time.